So we're working on Kill Team. We're pushing out some ideas, drawing on this perspective from Warhammer 40,000. I'm really glad to see Games Workshop officially releasing this. Now, Skirmish 40K, it's existed. In 4th edition, 40K, we had Kill Team rules. Then in 5th edition, we had Combat Patrol. There's fan stuff in Quizamunda. Before that, back in the day, we had Necromunda, and recently we had that re-release on there. But for the most part, smaller 40K, skirmish-type 40K was not mainstream. It was always an afterthought from Games Workshop. And the challenge I found in this kind of building that foundation was it was challenging to find players to play these type of smaller games, because you'd go to the club, you'd go to the shop, and they'd be like, I brought my 5 Imperial Knights and my 100 Space Marines and my 3 Land Raiders and my Special Forge World Tank. That's what I'm playing. I don't want to play anything else. And that's fair, right? Those are the models they brought. If you suggest playing a skirmish or a kill team, they look at you like you're crazy on there. Now that it's entered mainstream, now that it's officially supported, I'm seeing a lot of enthusiasm, which is great. And certainly as it drops off and kind of wears down, I still believe with the release schedule and things, there'll be enough interest generated where we can enjoy 40K from that perspective. And that I love, because ultimately all of us, whatever army you're playing, whatever entry point is into the narrative of 40K, we spend a lot of time building, painting, collecting, thinking, tactics. It's nice to play big games, small games, medium games, everything in there to get the most out of your model collection. So I'm glad to see another way to kind of utilize all the models that we have and we enjoy. The biggest challenge, and I'm pushing this vlog up with the other podcasts to my YouTube channel under the Warhammer 40,000 playlist, and also over on my blog, which kind of talks more about this. It's a big jump, because for most of us playing, I'm going to define regular 40K, whatever that is, but for playing a normal game of 40K, you have a lot of models, and essentially squads are just wound markers. You know, you got 10 guys, it's just 10 wounds. It's wound markers. And you can, not that you want to lose models, but you can afford to take losses, because you're like, I got 40 more Space Marines, so I lost a few. Big deal. I lost a tank. I got 3 more, right? It's you have redundancy. You can make a little bit of a mistake. You put models out. You take models out. You jump down to Kill Team. You jump down to Skirmish. You know, you have, Grey Knights is not the best example. You have 10 guys in your warband or your Kill Team. You lose 2 or 3. You're in a major hurt. You're in a lot of trouble on there. The best equivalent that I can think of cross-system is Battletech. Battletech, these mechs, you have a lance of 4 mechs. Maybe you have some infantry and some support vehicles. But as soon as you lose a mech, the way the initiative system is and the intimate nature of the game, things get really challenging. You lose 2 mechs, things become, you're really under a lot of tactical pressure on there. So what this means is it's not just like regular 40K where you set up, I set up, and we kind of run towards each other and we roll lots of dice and see what happens. Like, no, you have to pick where you're going to engage. You have to pick where you're going to go, what you're going to do, how you're going to approach. And if you're moving your models forward and it looks like you're going to be overwhelmed, or it looks like, hey, all of a sudden I have to cross this kind of open terrain to go from one building or one area to another, I can't do that. I don't like that. I'm going to get lit up, right? You really can't do that. So it offers new tactical perspectives that if you're coming from regular 40K, it's a real eye-opener. And it's a little bit of a challenge because, look, you know the rules, you know the models, you know the narrative. You're in that regular 40K mode. Welcome to Kill Team. So terrain. Terrain is where everything lives and dies. And I see a lot of the community talking about Kill Team and analyzing lists and factions and things. And yes, that's important. But, and I don't mean this in a critical way, that's not the starting point for Kill Team, in my opinion. The starting point is understanding how terrain interacts and activates and positioning of your units. Then we look at lists. And again, this is massive because in regular 40K, terrain is an afterthought. A lot of us, we don't play with the correct amount of terrain for 40K. If you look at other wargaming systems and if you look at strategy specific wargaming systems where tactical strategy is very, very important. I'm not saying it doesn't exist in 40K. You guys know I love 40K, but 40K, a lot of problems you can solve by throwing enough dice at it, especially as a D6 system. Other games like Battletech or Chain of Command, and I use those as examples because I'm familiar with them, and I play them a lot. I play them weekly. You look at those, tactics and terrain are very, very important, and if you mess up with your understanding of terrain, you're in trouble. So I think as those of us that are new to Kill Team, if we start with the terrain first, we have a tremendous advantage to punish. And I mean that in a good way, to punish our opponents and utilize that. So that's what we want to look at. Now this assumes, of course, you're playing with the correct amount of terrain. Kill Team needs to be very dense. The terrain for Kill Team, I think that's a bare minimum to start in the set. I think we want some other little pieces here and there, like rubble piles and a couple other little like line of sight blocking terrain, not for like 10 dudes to hide behind, but like 1 or 2 guys to run and gun to make things a little bit more dynamic and broken up on there. So I think it needs just a little bit more, but certainly it's a good start. So with terrain and engagement, I want to talk about elevation now, and we're going to push out other podcasts and other vlogs to explore this, but elevation seems like it's important in Kill Team, but it's not with that. Now, in regular 40K, and I'm contrasting back and forth because I want to offer those of you who have another entryway in 40K to kind of see a different perspective. 40K, you have a building, you have some hills. Okay, look, you get your Devastators up there. You get your IG heavy weapons team. I get some Rangers up there, Eldar Rangers. Elevation is good. It's going to allow you to shoot and essentially hit your choice of something, assuming you have the range and assuming you can go first. In 40K, regular 40K, there's so much stuff on the table, you will be able to shoot at something. You have stuff to shoot every single turn. Even if you don't move into position, you have stuff to shoot every single turn. It might not be what you want. This is why gunline armies are very potent in regular 40K versus kind of more mobile armies on there. Not that they don't work, but that's why the gunline, just sit there and roll dice and castle up and have lanes of fire, is potentially potent. But the elevation becomes important because if you can see everything onto the table, you have your choice of what, for that turn, if your unit's up, of what you want to try and punk or put some wounds on or remove off the table. That doesn't make it game-changing, but it makes it valuable to have. So if you cross that over to Kill Team and you say, look, if my opponent's got 10 models and I can get good elevation on there, if I can reach out and touch 2 or 3 models and take them out, that's a significant advantage. So I want to get that heavy bolter guy up in that tower. I want to position that. Elevation does not matter in Kill Team. And I'm not talking about like I'm on the first floor and you're on the second floor and I can't get to you and you run across the second floor and drop down behind me. That's movement elements of the game. I'm talking about a static firing position is less valuable than you think, for the simple reason that it's not so much that I can shoot back against you. Maybe I'll risk that, maybe I won't. Because remember, let's use the example. If you have a heavy bolter dude up in a tower, if I bring out one guy and I shoot at your heavy bolter guy, it's my turn, I can shoot at you, then it's only one. I may or may not hit. You can then light me up next turn. So now I need to bring out 2 or 3. We always want to try and engage 3 to 1. That was the previous podcast up there, where I need to make sure I take out that heavy bolter guy. But if I'm engaging 3 to 1 on the heavy bolter or whatever dude you have up in elevation, that, and this applies also to Necromunda and other skirmish 40K, that takes them out from other elements they need to be dealing with. If you're up in that, if we're playing with the correct amount of terrain and you are up at the highest point and you are static in there, then I should be able to run and move so that you will not be able to shoot at me because you are not running and moving. Mobility, the ability to deploy, to redeploy, to move up, to move back, that is key. That is king. Multi-fire, special weapons, heavy weapons, they all have their place in the game. but the mobility is absolutely key on there. When a recent game of Necromunda, Sisters of Battle, they put up a heavy bolter team up in there. Hey, that was great. Those are two models that now I can effectively ignore. I don't even have to deal with them. You've taken them out of the game, and this isn't a criticism to my opponent. He was like, I occupy the high ground. I have the high ground, right? But I'm not even going to engage you on there. So effectively, the points, the upgrades, the equipment, the slots, everything that went in building the list to that was removed from the game. This was just my Spires of Drex, my Coronate Warband, going up against them. It made things much, much, much easier for me. I still had awful dice rolls in that game. When tactics fail, we just blame the dice. But that's kind of the first piece in making that transition from big 40K, regular 40K, down to kill team, down to combat patrol, down to skirmish, understanding terrain. And that's where I want us to start. We've got about 2 or 3 more podcasts on that. Then we're going to switch over to list building. Then we're going to switch over to looking at various factions. And I'm very upset right now with Necrons. It was almost like a cut and paste type job where we got to get this faction in. So I'm hoping there'll be some changes, some FAQs as things move forward. Because essentially you have, with the weapons, you have special abilities that don't do anything special because of engaging one-to-one. It is rules as written, and I believe in rules as written. So, and at rules as written, that's how it kind of makes sense. We'll see. Fortunately, I've got my Spires of Drex and other warbands to play. But, Necrons, that Terminator narrative, right? Kind of Rise of the Machines, just walking and stuff like that's some good stuff right there. So hopefully we'll get that cleared up a little bit soon. But we'll dive into the warbands and we'll dive into the factions and kind of look at from that perspective. But that's third. Terrain, lists, then actual tactics. That's, in my opinion, in my experience, the layer for kill team, skirmish, Necromunda, Inquisimunda, combat patrol, whatever your flavor of small scale 40K is going to be.